The offseason has officially begun, and the Reds have a couple of decisions to make on some options, including Austin Hayes, who I'm not expecting to be back next season.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Reds podcast. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every single day. My name's Steven Offenbaker. His name is Jeff Carr. We love the Cincinnati Reds. We love baseball. We've been Cincinnati Reds fans our whole life. We love talking baseball. We love talking Reds, and we love doing those things with you guys on board. Thanks for being here. On today's show, we're going to take a look at Austin Hayes. Should the Reds bring him back? Should that be a consideration? That's a tough one. We're also going to get into Miguel Andújar, who performed admirably while injured after the trade deadline for the Reds and probably should be considered at the very least as a fallback plan in case things don't go the Reds' way in free agency. And the other Hayes on this team, Ke'Bryan Hayes, is once again golden. You probably have heard he won the Gold Glove yet again. We're going to talk about the defense of it all coming up a little bit later in today's show that is brought to you by Game Time. That's right, folks. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. All right, Jeff, let's dive into the Austin Hayes of it all. We'll get to Ke'Bryan a little bit later in the show, but Austin Hayes was brought in as a prove it. He was brought in as a can you rebound and be that other guy you were before the weird kidney injuries and all the stuff happened to you? Can you be that power hitting outfielder that we're looking for here in Cincinnati? Austin Hayes comes to town and kind of starts off on fire and making Nick Krall look pretty smart. But then the injury bug bit. He kept getting hurt. He kept getting derailed and never could quite recapture that magic that he opened the season with. And when you look at his performance in totality, I don't know that he's a viable option in the bring back column, Jeff.
No, and definitely not for his mutual option. His mutual option is for $12 million. Now, of course, mutual option means that he needs to accept it and the team needs to accept it. But I think that the Reds should pass on this one. Now, if you want to talk about bringing him back at a little bit of a lower rate, then fine. But something tells me he's going to try to parlay what he did this past season into a multi-year deal. Now, it's not going to be as easy as what happened for Nick Castellanos or something like that. It's not like he set the world on fire and everybody's like, all right, we'll give you a blank check. But there's a chance that somebody else could sign him to a multi-year deal. I don't think the Reds need to do that, though, because he was fine. He was okay. He wasn't the level that he was at 2023, when he was an all-star and had an OPS plus of 114, but his OPS plus of 105 in 2025 was much closer to the back of his baseball card. His career OPS plus is 106. So it's not as if he had a bad year. It's just he kind of had fine, sure. We're all fine here now. How are you? So when I look at Austin Hayes, I'm like, if you can bring him back on a little bit of a cheaper deal, sure. I don't think that's going to be available. So I don't see him being in a Reds uniform in 2026.
Yeah. And really not even as a fallback plan. That's got to be your extra emergency fallback from your spare part, from your.
And I think he's signing early on in the offseason. I don't think he's going to be there long.
And I think you're right. He'll try and parlay that into a multi-year deal. You talk about that mutual option. I think he would take that if the Reds wanted to pick it up. He'd take that $12 million for a season. But, I look at the body of his work, and he is far removed. He had that stretch where it was 3 years in a row. He was 107, 105, 114 in OPS plus respectively from 2021 to 2023. You look at that and you think of the ceiling, you think of the potential, but he's on the wrong end of that, right? He's just going to be his age 30 season. He's getting older. He's not in a space where you would project him to be on an upward trajectory. He's starting to enter that space where you start to see the beginning of the decline phase. I know we're talking about a 30-year-old in the decline phase, right? But it's that time where guys in their careers either plateau out or you start to see just a little bit of a dip. So,
Right.
the Reds need an outfielder that's still got some up potential, I think. And I just don't see that Austin fits the bill. And I wasn't completely upset with the signing of him. I ended up being a little bit upset when the Reds brought him in that this was the move. If this had been one of the moves, if this had been one of the things they did to address the outfield, and there was a bona fide that also came along, and then you hope that Austin Hayes is added to that, that would have been great. But when they made this the move, that's really where it became the problem. And that's also a mistake they can't repeat in this offseason. They can't sign Austin Hayes and bring him back or get the mutual option. And then we're going to talk in a little bit here about Miguel Andújar, or just sign Andújar and say, okay, look at that. We got our outfield. That can't be what they do. They have to learn from what's happened the last few years and go out and address it. All they got to do is look up the Dora to that other stadium and see what happens when you have glaring needs that you don't address. It becomes a big, big problem. And the Reds are just this far behind with their outfield where the Bengals defense is. So they need to make a move.
Oh, I don't know. That's pretty hard to do, but you're not wrong. It's not as if they've addressed it to a point that we're comfortable with it. I think that ultimately Austin Hayes should be like the baseline of guy that the Reds are looking to improve upon. If you bring back Austin Hayes as a complimentary move, or a hitter like Austin Hayes as a complimentary move this offseason, then that's fine. But the key is complimentary. Cannot be the feature move. But that being said, he's not the only player with an option. In fact, there are a couple of other guys in the bullpen with club options, not mutual options. So they do not require their input on the option decision. It's all based on what the team has. And that's both Brent Suter and Scott Barlow. And I think that it's a pretty elementary decision to bring them both back, because that will make your bullpen construction a little bit easier. Both guys really provided value for what their roles were. I don't think that any of us are expecting Scott Barlow to be the closer next year. Although, we mentioned last year when the Reds signed him, like, oh man, he's got closer experience if they need that. But I think we all understand he is the leader of the B group. He is your key guy that you're happy to see pitch if you're looking to get innings and not force Tony Santillan or other A guys that hopefully they add into throwing every other day. He's the kind of guy that you feel good about. On the other side of this, Brent Suter provides you value in the long term, as far as like if you've got a starter that doesn't go quite as deep as you like, you bring him in. He's your not necessarily mop-up guy, because that makes it sound like he can't pitch. He can pitch a little bit, but at the same time, he provides you length out of the bullpen that you're losing in both Nick Martinez and Zach Littell.
Jeff, do you have the option numbers in front of you, what each player would be getting for 2026?
I do. Scott Barlow's option is for $6.5 million, and Brent Suter's is for $3 million.
So the $6.5 million price tag for Scott Barlow is an interesting price tag, because if you look at what he did in the 2025 season, and you're right, he is clearly the leader of the B group. He had strikeouts per 9 at 9.9. You look at he got into 75 games, Jeff, throwing 68 in a third innings. That number, that $6+ million, I wonder if they couldn't not pick up the option, but then bring him back on a little bit more of a friendly deal. Because this is what they did with Brent. Yeah. This is what they did with Brent Suter in his previous deal, if you recall. I can't remember if he was non-tendered or they didn't pick up his option, but he hit.
I think option was declined, and then they brought him
and then they brought him back, right? And quite frankly, I could see them doing that with Suter again to pay him another 1 year with an option at like $2.5 million, something like that, if they want to gamble, saving just a little bit of money. Suter is an interesting case, because you're right, he does give you the ability to eat multiple innings, because if you look at the aforementioned Barlow, like I said, he got into 75 games. Brent Suter got into 48 games, but they only are apart by 2/3 of an inning. Scott Barlow pitched 2/3 of an inning more than Brent Suter did during the course of the season. That shows you the times that Brent went out and gave you multiple inning outings, and that's valuable as a B group in this bullpen. I'm not sure what the Reds would be willing to gamble, but of those two guys, I could see picking up Suter's option because the $3 million to save $1 million, it may not be worth the hassle for Nick Krall in the front office. But I think you could save a little bit of money. The question is, if Scott Barlow hits the open market, does it become a bit of a bidding? Are you fighting with other teams in order to get him back, even if it is to lead your B group? But looking at those options, those are both pitchers I would like to see back. There are things that need to be done in this bullpen heading into the 2026 season. But if you're looking at the B group and you're looking at some stability there, and you want to know what guys can give you in that part of the bullpen and that part of the game, I agree that both of those guys should be back in 2026.
You bring up the perfect point about this, because I think the $6.5 million option on Barlow is for the peace of mind that you don't have to win a bidding war for him. Because I do think other teams would be very interested in acquiring his services. But at the same time, it's also knowing this ball club, knowing who we're dealing with. Scott Barlow made $2.5 million last year. The option's $6.5 million. That sounds like a number that the Reds put there in case they traded him or something like that. Mm-hmm. And that they probably won't pick that up just for financial reasons. But I would say they should, for peace of mind, to make sure that they keep him in this bullpen. That's something they should have. I could see them turning that down simply because that's more than a 100% raise for Scott Barlow. Just the numbers on that sound very un-Reds-like, but I think that they should keep them. So what we're saying is keep Barlow and Suter, and I think we let Austin Hayes hit the open market. Now, there are a couple of guys that are straight free agents. There are no options that they have to sign up on or anything like that. And coming up, we'll tell you why the Reds need to at least make sure that Miguel Andújar is on the list of guys to bring back this offseason. The offseason's here, but hey, there's still plenty going on when it comes to NFL, NCAA football, basketball also is getting going this week, and the NBA too. So there's plenty of reasons to head on over to FanDuel, and new users can take advantage of this awesome offer where if your first $5 wager wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets. There's really no odds that you could put a $5 bet down and get $300 back. So FanDuel is really doing you a solid here if you're creating a brand new account. And there's so many different things to get in on, whether it's like same game parlays with NBA games, if you're looking at all the different college basketball games that are going on tonight, tomorrow, and every night from here on out, and of course, college football as well. But you can also look at baseball futures and look way ahead. Obviously, an offseason still yet to happen, moves still yet to be done, but the Reds are 40-1 to win the World Series. Just saying, maybe take a look at that too. That's all over at FanDuel. They've got this great app that you can download, and that $300 in bonus bets that you would get for your first winning $5 bet is usable across the app. Check out FanDuel today. Thank you for making Locked On Reds part of your everyday routine. And if you're not an everydayer, hit that subscribe button. Become an everydayer. Appreciate all our everydayers out there. And those who make us your first listen, however many listens each and every day. All right, Steve. So with the option decisions and all that other stuff, there are guys that hit the open market straightway after the World Series ended. The two main ones that we're really focused on are Emilio Pagán and Miguel Andújar. And I believe that Miguel Andújar should be part of the offseason plan. I'm not saying he's plan A or the number one guy that the Reds should target. But again, in the same conversational feeling of Austin Hayes, Miguel Andújar should be one of the number one complementary moves that the Reds should be considering this offseason.
Yeah, when the Reds brought him in here, everybody kind of looked around and was like, what? That's the move. That's the guy. But in the 34 games that he played in for the Reds after the trade from the artist formerly known as Oakland, he performed really, really well. In those 34 games, Jeff, 359, 400, 544. That's his slash line during his time in Cincinnati. Now, is he going to replicate that in 2026? I don't know. That's a big ask. Those are good numbers, but it's at least
and that's
worth
a small
conversation.
Sample too.
It is a very small sample size, but if you look at his overall body of work for 2025, he performed pretty well. Between his time in with the A's and the Reds, if you combine the numbers, 318, 352, 470 with 10 home runs. So he was hitting the ball well. His platoons, he's really good against left-handed pitching. That's why the Reds brought him in. And I think that's why you consider bringing him back, not as, and again, this is the same thing I was saying about Austin Hayes there in the first segment, Jeff. This can't be the move. This can't be the thing you do and say, look, all right, we got our guy for the outfield. You can't do that. But if you bring back Miguel Andújar as like your fourth outfielder and you use him as a platoon and get him in there at DH some and use him in the spots to put him in the best position to be successful, that would be a good re-sign. And I don't think he's going to garner a lot of money because, you know, he can't, his platoon says he's not an everyday player. His platoon says that you got to platoon him with somebody else. So I would not be opposed to the Reds bringing him back.
I don't know that I would sign him to be an everyday player, but I would push back a little bit. His platoon against righties isn't horrible. I mean, it's just his platoon against lefties is otherworldly good. In 90 at-bats last year against lefties, he had a 389 batting average with a 409 on base and a 578 slugging. That is hilariously good. His right-handed platoons are worse than that, but they're not bad either. The 290 batting average, 331 on base, 429 slugging, you would take that all day. I think the thing that happened to him last season was that leg injury that we never really got a whole lot of confirmation on as to what it was. I think I heard at one point it was a quad. At one point it was like a meniscus or something like that. It was enough that he could DH, but not enough that he could play in the outfield. So I wonder if he gets that healthy, if that's something that you would consider as, you know, making him a big part of your offseason. But at the same time, I still think that I would feel much better with Miguel Andújar rather than Miguel Andújar only.
Yeah.
So all of that. Yeah.
He can't be the splash move, but you have turned me around a little bit. I'm looking at his career splits right now. For his career versus right-handed pitching, he's 6% below league average. For his career versus left-handed pitching, he's 13% better than league average. So you're right. Saying that he's just clearly not an everyday player. You could play him every day, but that shouldn't be the Reds' move. That shouldn't be what they do to address the outfield. Miguel Andújar would be the perfect fourth outfielder on this team. You have to go get one of the starting three that's a power-hitting corner outfielder. You have to do that.
Right, and that's kind of the thing when it comes to what the Reds need in their outfield. It feels like they have a bunch of fourth outfielders right now. Like Noelvi Marte's got the potential to be a lot more than that. I think TJ Friedl kind of is who he is at this point in his career, which I love. But at the same time, the Reds need to start being objective about this and not thinking that he's going to go out there 162 games. And so
let me ask you this before you move into that thought. If they moved Ellie to center field and brought back Miguel Andújar and said, we're done with the outfield, would you be okay with that?
Yes, but they would need to make another move on the infield then. I think just get.
I don't think so. Well, it may be a position role player, but I would actually be happy if it was move Ellie and bring back Andújar. I would be happy with that. But it's not just hitting and it's not just outfield that they've got to address. Also, Emilio Pagán, who was the closer for this team in 2025, and really, for me anyway, he performed far better than my expectations for him when the Reds signed him. He's going to command some money on the open market, right, Jeff? I mean, he performed well enough that he's going to get more money than I think the Reds are going to be willing to give him, even though he's a 35-year-old relief pitcher. And we all know what relief pitchers can do year over year.
Right. It's a wee bit fickle because the last time, so this was not, I was about to say this was the best year of his career. It wasn't the best year of his career. The best year of his career was 2019 in Tampa Bay. He had less saves that year for the Rays, but everything else about his statistics that year was better. But the year after that happened, he kind of fell back a little bit. He went to San Diego in 2020, and albeit that was a shortened season, but he had a 4.5 ERA. And then the second year in San Diego in 2021, he had a 4.8 ERA. The reason that I point that out is because he threw 70 innings in 2019 for the Rays. He threw 68 2/3 innings for the Reds this year. So I don't necessarily know what value he brings in 2026, but it's probably going to be less than what he brought in 2025. But he is going, and he's earned this, but he's going to get more money than what the Reds are going to want to pay for him because as of last year, at least according to Fangraphs value metric, he was worth $8.3 million. That was about what the Reds were paying him. Spot Track, the website that I like to use during the offseason to really break down potential signings and how much they would be worth or how much they would cost, has him around a $12 million valuation per year. The Reds aren't going to pay that for a relief pitcher. They're just not. So
No,
if somebody else offers that, have fun, Emilio.
That's funny because Steve Track also has him at about $12 million, just in case you were wondering. That's kind of what I, just looking at his numbers, that's kind of where I would project him to land. And I think he'll get that. And good for him. Good for him going out and getting paid. This is probably going to be his last contract. He's going to get a 2 or 3 year deal at 10 to 12 per year. And this is probably going to be his last big league deal. So good for him.
So I want to say this, though, because this was an awesome year for Emilio Pagán. 32 saves as the Reds closer, a guy that we were skeptical about at the beginning of the season, where it's just like, all right, you're taking over for Diaz. What are you going to give us? But that was an amazing year. And since it's probably going to be the last time we get to say this, a little bit of deep analysis here. Emilio!
I
need Duckman, I swear to God.
So there is other free agents that the Reds have. Any that we want to spend some time on? Do we need to debate whether or not they bring Santiago Espinal back? He is now a free agent. No.
I think we can say, all right, hey, thanks for the memories and all this stuff from 2024, not the memories from 2025. Those weren't as good.
All right, let's end the show today on a good note because there is some hardware that got handed out, and Ke'Bryan Hayes is once again a Gold Glove winner. We're talking defense coming up right after this. The NFL season is in full swing, and honestly, there is nothing better than being in the stadium, surrounded by fans, cheering on your team, watching a Bengals defense give up 127 points a game. You just can't beat it, but let's be honest, getting the tickets can be a hassle. Between the queues, the login screens, and prices jumping at checkout, it's very, very frustrating. That's why I use Game Time. That's why Jeff uses Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. We use this all the time. We tell you guys about it. We go down to the banks during Reds games. We get something to eat. We get something to drink. And just before first pitch, we grab our tickets, head inside. This works great for the NFL also. This works great for college football as well. Get your UC tickets. Get your Ohio State Buckeyes tickets here. The possibilities are endless. They've got concerts. They've got comedy shows. They have it all. Download the Game Time app today. Create an account and use the code LOCKEDONMLB. You'll get $20 off your first purchase, which is already going to be greatly discounted because they have such good deals. Now, terms do apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time now. If you can't watch us here on YouTube, guess what? We are available pretty much on every single podcasting app that is out there. Take us on the road with you in the audio feeds. Take us to the car, take us to the gym. Wherever you need to be, we can be there with you. Subscribe today. All right, Jeff. Ke'Bryan Hayes has once again won the Gold Glove. He is a multiple Gold Glove award winner now. Defense is his specialty. Defense has never been a question. It's really one of the reasons why the Reds brought him in to shore up the hot corner over there at third base. This really is not a surprise if you were paying even a little bit of attention to how this award was probably going to break down. It was going to be Ke'Bryan Hayes.
Yes. Well, without a doubt. I mean, he's been one of the best fielders in baseball, let alone third base. I mean, he had a shot at the Platinum Glove, didn't think he was going to end up getting it, but 19 defensive runs saved last year. Between the Pirates and the Reds, they're playing at third base. I just want to put this into perspective, Steve. This one season, because this is a cumulative stat, the more you play, the more you accumulate based on how good you are and all this other stuff. It's not one of those things where you play a couple of games and your numbers are super high because of weird sample sizes. This is based on longevity. And how much he played, he was able to play as well as he did. He got 19 defensive runs saved. Do you know how many defensive runs saved that the Cincinnati Reds team has as a whole since 2023, since this era of Ellie and Matt McClain and all this began?
I don't know. You're going to tell me.
Negative 62.
Yeah, that sounds
He is, when it comes to the glove, he is he's not just a diamond in the rough. He's like the shiniest gold coin that you could possibly put in the middle of Mount Rumpke when it comes to how fielding looks for this team. It is a ridiculous contrast of him between the Reds.
Listen, I'm happy he won this award, and I love the defense that he plays, Jeff. My problem is, as much as he is a candidate year in and year out for the Gold Glove, as much as he is a multiple Gold Glove award winner, he is just as apt to be a multiple Golden Sombrero award winner. He just can't hit, and that's the problem. If he could just hit a little bit and combine it with that defense, we would be having a whole different conversation about Ke'Bryan Hayes. We're going to spend some time, I think, debating whether or not the Reds should move him. And I have landed firmly, squarely in the camp. If you can get any type of major league player, I don't care if it's a backup utility guy that's going to make you better on your bench at the major league level, or if it's a relief pitcher that's going to make your bullpen better at the major league level. Now, major league level, I want to hammer that point home. Major league level. If you can get a guy for your major league roster, I trade Ke'Bryan Hayes in a heartbeat.
I agree. It's really got to be for the right deal. I'm not trading him for nothing, but this team already has plenty of question marks in the lineup.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that Nick Krall has said multiple times he will not make a move for a player that hits well but doesn't field well. So why did he go make a move for a guy who fields well but doesn't hit well? It's the mirror universe version of his quote that it's like, well, I don't want to do one or the other, but you did the other. So I have questions about that. The hard part about this is, Steve, is that we have our Reds bias when it comes to this move, where in 158 at-bats as a Red last year, he had an OPS plus of 78. But let's take the bigger sample size. The last 2 years, and this is including his time with the Reds. In 2024 with the Pirates, his OPS plus was 62. And in 2025, between the Reds and the Pirates, his OPS plus was 65. League average is 100. For those who don't understand that means that the league average hitter is at 100. He was 38% below league average last year, or 2024, and he was 35% below league average this year. What we're talking about, if he could hit at all, is if he could just be 20% below league average, 10% below league average. I feel like even that seems like a hard ask. And so when you look at that and you say, could he ever do that? And if you ask me to put money on that, I would say no. And so if that's the case and you get an offer like our friend Booney over at Locked On A's presented of a major league relief pitcher, a guy named Justin Sterner, right-handed guy who pitched pretty well last year in a middle relief role for Ke'Bryan Hayes, I think that's the move that you jump at.
He's close to being that guy. If you're willing to accept an OPS plus of 85 to 90, Jeff, he's done that before. He did that in 2022 in 100 and where'd it go? I lost it. 136 games. He had an 88 OPS plus. And if you're wondering what that looks like as far as the slash line goes, his slash line that season was 244, 314, 345. Not that far off what he was for the Reds. Just the Reds, not his combined 2025 numbers, but what he did once he got out of that hellscape that is the Pittsburgh Pirates organization. You look at that. His slash line for Cincinnati alone was 234, 315, 342. So just a couple points off in slugging, actually a point higher in on base percentage. And the difference was in the batting average. He was about 10 points higher, or he was 10 points higher in batting average. So he got on base a little bit more in 2022 than he did in 2025. But I don't think that's enough. And that's where I'm going with this. Not as your third baseman, not as a position that traditionally is a middle of the lineup bopper type of guy. That's what the Reds need at the third base position, especially if they don't get a guy that can hit 30 to 35 home runs to play outfield this offseason. If they don't go get that guy, they absolutely cannot roll with Ke'Bryan Hayes as their third baseman.
And I know we've heard this a lot over the last couple of years, but they've got a guy with that potential in Sal Stewart. They could just trade Ke'Bryan Hayes for a relief pitcher and move Sal Stewart to third base. And look, there was this guy in my Twitter mentions the other day that says Sal Stewart's horrible at fielding at third base. He's played 6 games there. I'm going to give him a little bit more of a runway than that before I make a decision as to what his glove looks like at a position. But at the same time, nobody's going to be as good with glove as Key Brian Hayes. That is clear. But if he's going to be that bad with the bat, it's hard for me to say he's untouchable, and you just pencil him in for the next 4 years.
Yeah, the thing with Sal Stewart, Jeff, is that it begins with that thing that I said that I kind of want to be done with, which is, boy, I hope that Sal Stewart can be a bona fide major leaguer. Boy, I hope that Sal Stewart can hit the ball. Boy, I hope that Sal Stewart really is going to be, we just don't know. And that's a big, big gamble heading into the season, but that might be exactly what they do. And again, I would be fine with that if there's an outfield bopper that they bring in as well. I have much more, I would give them much more leeway to do any of these other things if all of that begins with, by the way, we signed so-and-so that's going to hit 30 to 35 home runs to play left field. You start with that, then you can do all this other experimentation and hope as a strategy and all these other things that you want to do if your name is Nick Krall. And I'm going to be like, okay, but you signed the outfielder finally. So that's where it has to begin for me.
We'll do a more in-depth conversation as to why I'm bullish on Sal Stewart at third base, because I think that there are reasons to be bullish about him at third base, but that's for another episode. Thank you so much for checking out today's Locked On Reds, and I appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. If you already haven't done so, our everydayers are awesome, and we appreciate you. And if you're not an everydayer, please become one by hitting that subscribe button. We welcome you along, because we're going to be talking Reds baseball all throughout the off season. This is going to be your destination to talk Reds, even when the snow's on the ground and you got the fire burning in the fire. What's the name of it? Fire pit, fire something. Yeah. Stove, no. Chimney,
Okay.
Close. Fireplace. Why couldn't I think of that? Anyway, that means we should go. Thank you so much for checking out today's Locked On Reds. Now make sure to check out Locked On MLB. Sully's got you covered all throughout the offseason with all the big news going around the league. That's Locked On MLB, just like Locked On Reds. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. But as for me and Steve, we are talking Reds every single day.
Oh, I think you pulled a muscle there.
Yeah, I tripped over everything in my head.